Vivirum corpus natum de Maria Virgine, vere pasum aemolatum in cruce promine, cuius natus perforatum fluxit aqua et sanguine, est nobis pregus datum, mortis in examine. O Iesu dulcis, O Iesu pie, O Iesu fili Mariae. Some years ago, I found myself in front of one of the most ornate high waters in the British Isles. It was at Farnborough Abbey, which was so ornate because it was built as a kind of mausoleum after the fall of the Third Empire in France. And there you had Napoleon III, Eugenia, his wife, and Louis, who had been killed in the Zulu War, all there in the crypt. But then you had a church on top, something out of France. And it just happened that they had a tradition there going back to the liturgical movement way back at the beginning of the last century, because they were solemn in exile, and they had worked there on the liturgy. And that had carried on. And it was a place where on a Sunday morning only the best was given to God. They had a magnificent choir of boys and men, professionally trained. They had 2 organists, amongst the highest of the country, and a fantastic organ. And the Sunday Mass would last about an hour and a half quite often, and people would come in droves. And there was one curiosity. They had in the air hanging this old pyx, way up in the rafters nearly, up there, but in the middle of all. And once a week, a machine would work, and it would come down slowly just before Holy Communion at the High Mass. And it would form then a tabernacle over the high altar, with the veil which it had on it spread out. And it suggested, as people noticed immediately, this is the gospel, literally. Bread from heaven. And people who came there were moved sometimes to tears by what? The fact that, at least there, some suggestion of the presence was shielded, that care was taken, and that hours of preparation would happen, and that one suggested somehow, with the poor means that one had, we are touching heaven with the best that we have of human means. I make a jump. This morning, unfortunately, God, by now, on this day, is in the margins. The Lord's wish that there should be a feast socially celebrated in which he would triumph, and in which the greatest gift on earth would be recognized as such, has been pushed aside. A low mass in every church today, practically in this land, and on Sunday, a bit more perhaps, but I wonder how much in most churches. I wonder certainly how much public and social celebration there will be outside the church walls. I wonder too how much of that maximum will in fact be given. Do you know that there's a fundamental difference between singing at Mass and singing Mass? It's one thing to have a bit of music as one comes in and goes out, and a bit thrown here and there inside. It's another to go into a mode of otherness, in which one suggests immediately that to communicate with the Almighty, one has a certain difference. Chant, incense, movement, sound, and a creation of stillness in which he may reign and speak. A jump. In our average celebration in Ireland, how much of that do we find? It's questionable whether people should be provoked into laughter in church. It's certainly questionable whether people should be applauding other people in church. Is that the purpose of our celebrations? Now, there is more to it than that. This education to the sacred is something that we have received from, initially, the Jews. We have received in the first stages what came from the temple and the synagogues. What do we find? Already, the Psalms of David, inspired by the Holy Spirit, and what? Set to music. A psalm is set to music by its nature. How much now is heard in the first part of the liturgy of that element of going into mode? Psalere, to psalm to God with the tsichara. It's actually a kind of harp. Do you know that the Lord himself used that when he instituted what we're doing now? If you notice carefully, it said, having sung a hymn, they went to the garden. Now, that would have been the Hallel, those psalms sung at that point. Do you see that from the first celebration, the mode of otherness was there? What did the early disciples do? They went into that mode, certainly in the East, but also in the West. The difference is that in the West, they celebrated as time went on more frequently, with the result that there became this division between the sung and the said. But the sung was always there, once a week. And that, unfortunately, is the bit that went in many places after the Second Vatican Council. Not really from a holy simplicity, but out of pure laziness. Now, there is more. If one looks at history, one finds that the most humble, common, peasant, worker, even child, if he or she wanted, once a week, could be bathed in something which lifted him up out of his misery, the misery there was over the centuries. These beautiful churches were built by the poor, and they also were the ones who wanted beauty. The result is that great apostles for God amongst the common people, like Philip Neri, were able to bring healing to people and also contact with God through plugging in to what he knew to be powerful for the healing of mankind. Through him was harnessed all the power of the likes of Palestrina, which created a bit of heaven on earth to which the ordinary person had access and had right. I make a jump. Are we healed by many of our celebrations today? Has God time to reign on the mind by having access to a still interior, which all this became the occasion of? Because if there's a shield and a padding from noise for a while, if there's something elevating us, then we give God the opportunity to directly minister to the depths of our being. because music and beauty touches us at our most profound level. It can bring tears, it can bring consolation, it can bring an awareness that there's something majestic around us, protecting us, wanting our good. How many now, in our celebrations, are healed and in that way elevated? Do you see how the project of God was two-way? Glory for Him and opportunity for Him and for us to meet. Now, I make a jump. If we believe that we have in our part of the earth belonging to heaven something extraterritorial, then in some way heaven is here and reigns in this consecrated building. Now that has consequences. If we believe in the real presence, we believe also in the presence that surrounds it. And right now, we are hugely surrounded. I've told you before how one time a priest went into church because he'd forgotten something. We had to do something in the middle of the night. Just an ordinary parish priest. He opened the door. The church was full of people. He raised his voice. Who let you in? No answer. He raised it even more. Who let you in? They ignored him completely. He was dumbfounded. I think he went out and came back immediately. No one there. There wasn't a soul in sight. The church was completely empty. Now this priest was very balanced. As quick as he went the following day to find another priest, he told him all that had happened. And the other priest was very balanced. He knew that his friend wasn't at all given to anything spooky. And he had what it seems is the right answer. Do you know who they were? They were souls from the beyond who were doing their purgatory there where they had offended the Divine Majesty. They were so silent there because they'd been so talkative before. Which brings me to where I want to end. The cushion that we all protect the Divine Majesty with is silence to protect interiority, encounter, and the rights of God, who demands that language without a noise. I've shown you this before, but I'll just quote this again because it's worth it. It was given to a child, the youngest beata in the church, I believe, Jacinta of Fatima. And there you can see the little child, Jesus, peeping out of the tabernacle and saying that he does not want people talking in church. But what is interesting is that Jacinta of Fatima, just before she died, was given this message for the world, it seems. Noticing that many visitors chatted and laughed in the chapel in the orphanage in Lisbon. You know, she died away from home, poor thing, where she spent her dying days. Little Blessed Jacinta asked Mother Godino to warn them of the lack of respect for the real presence is represented. When this did not bring about a satisfactory result, she asked that the Cardinal be advised that Our Lady does not want people to talk in church. And our celebrations, not here, but in Ireland, what happens? After the dismissal, explosion. It becomes the agora, the marketplace, and the angels weep above our heads. I just finish with this, which I found again with great emotion actually this morning. I look back in what I'd written before ordination in Italy, And I came across something I'd forgotten about actually. It was the last time I did deacon. It was at the High Mass on the Sunday, and I was going into retreat and coming back to be ordained a priest. But that hit me, what was about to happen. In a few hours, an ontological change, and God would take possession of a being so as to borrow his voice box and to come from heaven to earth, but could not do it without that voice box. Ordination is a link between heaven and earth. The devil knows it and does all to make sure that the best candidates do not get to the altar. Last Sunday, as deacon at our High Mass at St. Antimo Abbey. O peace, I have found all. I have come home, and 'twas not very far. 'Twas at the door of this, the tent of meeting, where there come again at whiles the wings I heard before. Hard by the Master watching, I have been alone with these my brethren oft a time, when youth was strong and truth in fire was seen. Yet 'twas ere now ne'er given hereto to climb. For on the morrow stands the Lord of all, awaiting with the hand that made the years. And here, anon, a syllable too small to hold the cosmos well will touch my ears. My ears, I say, my hands, my singed soul, and utter naught will Godhead court control.